Starting the show today with the Vice President of the United States. Go Kamala.
And speaking of our children, extremists pass book bans to prevent them from learning our true history. This year of our Lord 2023.
Book bans, okay.
And while
Kamala.
they do this, check it out. They push forward revisionist history. Just yesterday in the state of Florida, they decided middle school students will be taught that enslaved people benefited from slavery.
Now, folks, that is an outright lie and a hoax. I tweeted immediately upon seeing that clip and the vice president saying that. I think I said it's an obvious hoax. How can somebody so prominent be so easily duped? At that point, I had not seen the story, quote unquote. I had not seen the text, quote unquote. As per usual in the Great American Mail, we will give that to you today. I turned out to be right. Am I a genius? Well, I might be, but I'm not a genius in that particular instance because nowadays you should know just about everything they say and do is a hoax, right? And I knew that wouldn't be the case. But anyway, before I get to what we're going to go over today and all the different news of the day, and it is a slow news day. That's about all they have, and then the continuing of the censorship of the Oversight Committee. And it's really kind of a slow day. And normally that would mean I have a lot of things to talk about, but I really want to finish the podcast and get over and watch the rest of the Open Championship, which the second round is today. So there's a couple more hours of coverage I'd like to get to. Anyway, and I'm also a little burned out from coming back. But without further ado, we're going to go over the Democrats just trying to obfuscate everything that's going on with the censorship committee. And it's occurring to me now that I may have lost somewhere in there one of the bites that I had. I hope I haven't. Well, we'll just see. I'll be able to pull it back up. Anyway, so we're going to cover Kamala in a moment. But let's switch gears. I covered this yesterday, but a lot of people are covering it today. And it's reminding me now that I'm a couple days back into this, that one of the things, and I knew why this happened. At first, it was just unusual. But you hear stories here first. We cover them first. Other people cover them the day after, even the day after that. And I'm not trying to brag. I mean, I guess I am a little bit. But there's a reason for that. I never told you why. I'm still not going to tell you why. But there's a reason why that's the case. But anyway, so this was in the can yesterday to talk about, and I just skipped over it. I can't remember why or for whatever reason. But the Oversight Committee, which is part of the Republicans taking over the House, are doing a couple things. One, they have a committee on censorship. And so because they have a committee on censorship, they brought forward Robert Kennedy Jr. to talk about censorship. Now, we covered this last week. We covered the hoax of Robert Kennedy and his anti-Semitic remarks. He didn't make any anti-Semitic remarks. Far from it. There was nothing anti-Semitic at all. But they ran with it, and it became anti-Semitic, and it ran the news cycle for 24, 36, 48 hours. Now, one of the things that Rush used to say, they always tell you who they're afraid of, and that's a signal that they're a little bit more concerned about RFK Jr. than I would have thought. So they've got to turn up at overdrive because there's a real problem with their theory to get rid of Biden is to have him lock up enough delegates and then quote unquote retire. And then with the super delegates and whatever he's got pledged to him, which become unpledged and they can vote for whoever they want once he steps out, then they pick Newsom or Whitmer or Obama or Oprah or whoever. Not Obama, not the one, but Michelle Obama. Anyway, that may not work if he can't secure enough delegates. And I think more and more people are starting to worry that, Kennedy might be a problem here. So they got to try to take him out. Anyway, so when he was called to testify before Congress, it sounded something like this. Now, again, this is a subcommittee on censorship of the government. And what do you think the Democrats' first thing when this guy is introduced and he's going to be called to speak, what do you think the first thing they do on a committee that has been put together to investigate government censorship? Well, it would be censorship. Take a listen.
I like the race.
Let me cause it. I don't know why it does that. It's stubborn. This is now the second time today I've told the speaker. I started, and for whatever reason, I put the speaker on the speaker that's supposed to be it. It's just louder one. And then for whatever reason, the system switched back. It's annoying. And now
Point of order, pursuant to House Rule 11, Clause 2, which Mr. Kennedy is violative of. I move that we move into executive session because Mr. Kennedy has repeatedly made despicable anti-Semitic and anti-Asian comments.
Okay, so she wants to go into an executive session, which means it's out of the public eye. He can speak, but we can't see it. And it's because he's made anti-Semitic remarks. Now, thank God for her. I didn't have to go pull the bit. I did it whenever I did the Kennedy thing. I did it. You listen to it all. You can go do it on the podcast. But she's going to read it verbatim. And perk your ears up here. See if you hear anything anti-Semitic.
Last week, Rule 11, Clause 2 says, whenever it is asserted by a member of the committee that the evidence degrade or incriminate any person, or it is asserted by a witness that the evidence or testimony that the witness...
Now, the third time it's done it.
...or incriminate the witness, and it goes on. Mr. Kennedy, among many other things, has said, I know a lot now about bioweapons. We put out hundreds of millions of dollars into ethnically targeted microbes. The Chinese have done the same thing. In fact, COVID-19, there is an argument that it is ethnically targeted. COVID-19 attacks certain races disproportionately. The races that are most immune to COVID-19 are...
The lady making a motion or a speech?
I've made a motion to move into executive session.
All right, I want to finish earlier today, so we're going to move on. But folks, basically the motion failed because the Republicans control the House and they control this committee. So it's not going to get voted up. But one of the things that's interesting we talk about a lot is just how bad the political environment is. Just how fetid it is. It's completely rotted. Anybody who's rational and spends any amount of time can debunk this stuff as it's going on. This is idiotic. I mean, it's just moronic from the very beginning. So we called somebody, and because you've got some rule you claim you have, and I guarantee I didn't research the rule for the show, but I'm certain it's not for this particular print, and you don't like what they said, you get to have an executive session, and they get to speak, but the American people don't get to see it. And I was thinking about this today when I was doing some other things. The idea of self-government, right? We all are self-governed, supposedly, under the Constitution, which means all of us are the governed and the governing, right? Which means you have no right to censor anything. Now, you have certain things that you can do because you're in positions of power. But the notion, the very idea that you should be able to tell me what I can hear and see, I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's nuclear secrets, it's any of this stuff, is absurd. But that's fine. A lot of people, they get fooled by that and they go, oh, yeah, these are famous, special people. They get to hear and see things that we don't get to see. Even about some citizen who's got some opinion about misinformation or censorship. I mean, this is nutso. We're not talking about nuclear secrets here. We're not talking about military secrets, which, by the way, we've now learned over the last couple of years, even they're bogus. But whatever. She literally, with a straight face, said, he said some things. They're not even anti-Semitic. She just read them. They're not anti-Semitic. And because of this, I now want to vote on this. Now, folks, this is the kind of thing, it's like, I'm not, are you sure you want to go there? Because I don't think you have a point, but you're just going to reveal it. And again, this is the there's a lot of things going on here. But to me, the biggest takeaway here is not what everybody that's talking about this, oh, can you believe the Democrats did censorship with censorship? It's just crazy. I mean, you're investigating censorship, and they're showing you right there that, and any American that sees this, is going to go, what are you trying to, say that I can't see? I didn't want to see it, but now you say I can't see it, I want to see it, right? There's all that going on. But here's the bigger point. They don't care anymore. They're not even pretending to care, right? And I talked about this, was talking about it back, I don't know, I guess I did the podcast for about 2 years. Probably 6 months into it, I kept saying that they're building an alternate reality, and this is going to make them immune from elections. They're going to be able to create a reality every time there's an election, every 2 years for House, every 6 years for Senate, every 4 years for the president, et cetera, that they'll just create it. And the voters won't be voting on information, of course. They'll be voting on whatever they've been told or whatever world has been created. Right? And that's where they're going. And they are to the point now where, it would take you, 2 or 3 months when I first said it. Now, a day. And we're going to go through a bunch of them today having to do with this censorship. But that was the first try, is he said something I don't like. I'm going to label it anti-Semitic. And therefore, and again, I actually don't know. So I'm not going to say something I don't know. I didn't look for it. It's not really important. But I'm certain every Democrat voted, yes, so he should be censored. I mean, think about that. Just let that sink in. But, all right, so continuing with this committee, I don't my computer's going on. So here's another little tactic that they do. Here's Hakeem Jeffries, okay? Again, we're going to hear later about the Jason Aldean, try that in a small town. I'm not going to play the bit, but we're going to talk about it a little bit tangentially. But I want you to understand, you're expected to believe that we are a racist country. Now, on the weekend, I will have to watch the British Open, where I won't be, well, I guess I could try to, but basically, on the weekends when I watch sporting events mainly, occasionally some other things, I see these things called commercials, right? Now, I don't like seeing commercials because normally I stream like everybody else where there are no commercials. And if I don't stream, I normally watch it on a DVR so I can fast forward through the commercials. But when you're watching stuff live, which is rare, but sporting events tend to be live, and when you're watching them live, you have no ability to avoid the commercials. So I will watch the commercials. Now, anybody who watches the commercials, it's hard to believe that this is a racist country because black people are everywhere and white people are not there. Now, I suppose you could advance an argument that those were the most qualified people and these are the people that we believe will actually sell the products. I suppose that could be possible in some universe. I really don't care that much. My only point is, look, don't give me this garbage about how racist we are when I can see in my own eyes that people are getting positions at least equally. And in most cases, for example, in the commercials, they appear to be doing better than they would if they just succeeded based on the percentage of people. And that's going to be important because we're going to come up to something later in the show. I want you to remember that. If your point is, right, you people should succeed based on the percentage they make up of the population, I should see mostly white people in commercials. I don't see that anymore. Okay, fine. So they're not the most qualified people. I'll accept that. All right, but then don't try to use that against me. But oh yeah, that's what we got. And here example is another one. What has Hakeem Jeffries ever done? Had you ever even heard of flipping Hakeem Jeffries before Nancy Pelosi decided to step down? Folks, he's there because he's black. I mean, there's nothing particular exceptional about him, right? That's why he's got the position. Now, I'm sorry I have to say that, but that's just the truth. Anyway, so he's not a particularly talented individual, but you know, he has this little thing where he likes to speak with his cadence and rhymes, and he's a poor man's Jesse Jackson. But he makes an important point here, or at least they think it's an important point. But I want you to understand, you have to know history. This is a trick. Bill Clinton was the master of it. I mean, he was the first one to pull it, and he did it very well. Hakeem here doesn't do it nearly as well for a bunch of reasons, but take a listen anyway.
I mean, the Republican hearings...
Number 4. God, this computer. I know people don't care. I know, but sorry. Let's try it one more time. Stay on that clip. I'm going to try to keep that app open so I can.
And throughout...
All right. Take 4.
The Republican hearings that have unfolded over the last few days and throughout this entire Congress are a malignant clown show that are not designed to address issues that impact the health, the safety, and the economic well-being of the American people, but instead peddle outlandish and out-of-control conspiracy theories. The notion...
This is what he does. Peddle outlandish conspiracy theories. A clown show, right? And this is somehow supposed to be, you know, something that we should think is great. It's just complete nonsense. But he's actually playing a game here. Bill Clinton, you'll remember back in the, I guess it was the 90s because he was elected in 1992. And at some point, it turns out he was having an affair with an intern. And then at some point, it turns out he did 2 things that were impeachable. One, he lied to the American public about it. Right? I did not have sexual relations with that woman, not once, not ever. And then number two, he apparently went to a friend of hers that had some dress that had some DNA on it. You can use your own imagination. And there was some evidence, right, that he tried to get her to either to destroy the evidence or anyway. So that's obstruction of justice, folks. I mean, and I'm not talking about the Trump obstruction of justice, so they just make up out of whole cloth and manufacture. That's actually trying to get somebody to get rid of evidence. That's obstruction of justice. Okay, classic. And at some point, he was going to go down to Congress, and this thing was all starting. And people came and asked him about it, and his only bill could do it. And folks, listen, I voted for him the second time. I didn't vote for him the first time. But if you were around in those days, to some extent, the economy was going. It was just humming along like a Lexus, so a lot of people were happy about that. And that was back when the economy mattered more than it did. It's sad it doesn't, because the economy is sort of a neutral, objective arbiter. It's a good thing when you have objective things determining how happy people are. Remember the famous line from the election, the 1980 election, Reagan, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? It's just that simple. If you are, vote for Carter. If you're not, vote for me, right? That's objective. I mean, you either are or you aren't. When I can come in, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Well, I mean, financially, I'm not. I mean, prices are up and my credit card debt's up. But but the Republicans are going to end the democracy. And look what they're doing to the children, right? I mean, they're banning bugs. I mean, I'm not better off in any objective measure, but subjectively, what they tell me, I'm terribly worse off, right? So that's what the Democrats are going for. I've been saying that long enough. But anyway, so when they went to Clinton, they said, what about lying and what about this obstruction? And you know what he said? He said, you know what? This whole thing, this whole committee is not going to put one drop of food on the table of hardworking Americans. It's not going to help a father feed his family. Something, I don't remember exactly what he said. Those of us, who were rational back then were like, what are you kidding me? That's not having anything to do with this. But people bought it, and you don't need many people to buy it. That's one of the things you got to learn about this. You don't need a majority or 30, 40, 50. All you need is a very vocal amount of people, and the Democrat Party are proving that. But there's Hakeem Jeffries, a poor man's Jesse Jackson, a poor man's Bill Clinton, pulling this crap about, it's a clown show, and da-da-da-da-da, and oh, by the way, this isn't going to help the American people. Well, you know something, Hakeem? This is called the Oversight Committee, and this is a subcommittee of the Oversight Committee. It's called Oversight. What you're talking about is something else, another committee, right? I mean, Congress has that'd be like saying, well, we're having, the Intelligence Committee or the Nuclear Committee to look at our nuclear codes. Well, how's this going to put food on anybody's table talking about nuclear codes? For real? I mean, and we used to have a system where he's sitting here in C-SPAN, and I got to move on, but if you looked at it, a Republican's there, nobody shows up. There's like 25 people who will listen to this guy. Right. And then one other thing, I corresponded with him a couple of days ago when one of the things he tweeted something like this. And he basically accused the Republicans of not being serious and not, acting with decorum. And he constantly does this. Comes out, includes his opposition to being extremist, clown shows, and all kinds of other things. But he somehow comes off as somebody who's doing it the right way, I suppose. I do have it. All right. So a lot of what's going on here as it relates to censorship and various other things has to do with Biden. So I wanted to make sure I had this clip, and I thought I didn't have it. But this is Biden back when he was running, okay? And at this point, we did not know. And let's take a step back. What did we not know this would be back in 2019, right? So this would be basically even before the Democrat primaries had begun, right? Kind of where we are now is where this would be for the 2020 election. And back then, all we knew, remember this, go back. It's not that far. What did we know? We know that Biden and then Hunter Biden had a sweetheart deal with Burisma. He's making $50K a year just to be on the board. So they're giving him, $50K a month to be on the board. We didn't know anything. And I remember then everybody's like, well, he's not even, how do you know what Biden's qualified to do? How do you know what Hunter Biden brings? Maybe, and Biden was Joe. All right, take two. I'm going to start saying Hunter or Joe, and you translate to the then running for, or actually, it was, candidate Biden. So we kept saying, hey, look, the fact that he's getting paid $50,000 a month is corruption. You don't know. He could be doing all this good stuff, and that was the argument, right? So we didn't know what we know now. Now we've gotten a ton more evidence, right? Now, if again, it's not like the Democrats are coming out saying this is completely fabricated at this point. They did right before the election. Oh, yes, Russian disinformation or misinformation or malinformation. I forget which information category it falls into in their brains, but they got one where it's somehow not information. But back then, all we really knew was what this guy was going to say. And this is a big tell. Because this is Joe Biden who's running to restore honor. He's got to run because of what happened in Charlottesville, and he's somehow honorable, which was, again, a laughable notion to those of us that have been following politics. You could say a lot of things about Senator Joe Biden and Vice President Joe Biden. One would not be that he brings decorum or honor to anything. That's just not what he is and never what he's ever been, But anyway, here's a campaign event and what happened during that campaign event. Take a listen. There it goes. 5th time it's switched. I don't know why it's doing that. All right.
But you, on the other hand, sent your son over there to get a job and work for a gas company that he had no experience with. That's nothing. In order to get access to the president. So you're selling access to the president just like he is. So
you're a damn liar, man. That's not true. And no one has ever said that. No one has ever said that.
I see it on the TV.
You see it on the TV. No, I know you do. And by the way, that's why I'm not sedentary. I get up and
all right, there it is. You're a liar. You're a damn liar. Nobody's saying that. And then he moves on. Unlike you, I'm not sedentary. He goes on to call him fat and challenges him to an IQ test. And I said it. I wasn't broadcasting then, but I would have said it then. And I when I saw it, I remember, that's Joe Biden. That's not the first time he's done that running for president. Okay, he's done it many a time. That's who he is. Anybody who's got any smoothness to him at all, right? If that had been Bill Clinton would have told that guy, you know what? I understand your concern. I understand these TV people. Let me tell you something. That's not what's going on. I mean, he would have made that guy feel like he wanted to vote for Bill Clinton after Bill Clinton had finished with him. Reagan would have done the same thing. But even a bad candidate, okay, even a bad candidate knows you can't call a potential voter in a Democrat primary a damn liar, and you can't call them fat, and you challenge their IQ. Right? You just got to say something, even a bad candidate would say, look, sir, I understand your concern, but I don't know how many times I can tell you that's just not true. They're attacking my son to get to me, and I apologize that they're misleading you, sir, but I'm running to restore decency to the blah, 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 blah. Say whatever you want. The last thing you do, this is a tell right here. This is the tell of a guilty person and somebody who's mean-spirited and is caught red-handed. That's why he doesn't like it. And the other thing that we've seen since this time, it really was when he got elected that the real Biden came out. He doesn't like being challenged. Who the heck are you to challenge me? I'm Joe Biden. And I could have told you, look, you can go back to the Judiciary Committee. You could see that stuff was out there. So the strange case of Stacey Plaskett. And by the way, thanks for the crowd, that the I Feel Cheated crowd, and for emailing me these suggestions. When somebody texted me, emailed me, I can't remember, I get them confused. But anyway, and said I need to do better about transitions. And I appreciate the criticism, and I will try. But the problem with me with transitions is I'm just trying to get to all the stuff quickly, and I don't script this. Like by the time I get all the slides up and what I want to talk about and sift through all this crap to figure out what's the important and what's not. Like as soon as I do that, I go live. In fact, and you'll notice I'm doing the weekend broadcast. I'm going to do it again this Saturday. You'll notice that one. If you let the first one, let that one go because I hadn't done anything. But this one this weekend, and you will hear it's all the same stories. I'm not going to do all of them. I'm just going to pick like the top 5 or 6 out of all the ones we did this week. And you'll notice that my coverage of them will be far better because this is the second time I'm talking about it. But anyway, we'll try to work on the transition. So still the same committee, the same hearing. And the ranking member of this committee, and ranking member means you are the most senior person in the minority. That's what a ranking member is, okay? And so this would be Stacey Plaskett, who would be a non-voting, essentially honorary member from the Virgin Islands, I believe. Now, she used to be a Republican. I can't remember where she got appointed to by George W. Bush, but she did. And then later she decided she was a Democrat, and she unseated the traditional ceremonial person from Virgin Islands. And folks, I may technically be wrong about that. There's several people that have, like Puerto Rico, they're not states, so they don't have DC, same thing, they don't have real voting power. So traditionally they get a little honorary thing, but they have no vote. And increasingly, these people have been given positions of power. Now, in the 80s and the 90s, that would have been a laughable notion. You mean you're telling me you're giving somebody a ranking position on a committee right now? And again, that's not a joke. They made sure that happened. They didn't have to. They could have put somebody on that committee that was more senior to her, because if you'll recall, that's how Democrats do it. They don't care about egalitarianism, how good you are. It's all about your seniority. So if you manage to stick on a long time, you're going to have some power with the Democrat Party. Not so much in the Republican. You'll remember Paul Ryan went from being a relatively junior member to being the Speaker of the House. That doesn't happen in the Democrat circles. Anyway, coming back to Stacey Plaskett. So she's now the ranking member, and don't take my word for it. And I'm going to say it a couple more times, and then as people get used to me coming back, I won't have to say it anymore. But look, don't just trust me. But I'm not lying to you. She is about as nasty a person as you're going to find. I mean, I'm talking Pelosi nasty, Debbie Wasserman Schultz nasty, and this is the type of person that is rising in the Democrat ranks. Okay, this is what it is. I almost played a bit where a couple of days ago somebody asked for unanimous consent to have a document read into the record, and she objected and said, "This person's not here, so it's hearsay." Lady, that's what unanimous consent is for. Does anybody object to us just putting this in the record? Because if you do, then we'll have to vote on it. But I'm asking for unanimous consent. And in the most nasty fashion, she said, "You can't do this. I'm not doing it." And, okay, fine. So we're going to have a vote on it. She got up literally and went over and threw the piece of paper in the member's face. I mean, I almost used that, but this is a little bit more on point for what I wanted to do. So here was her talking in this same committee where RFK Jr. came to speak. Take a listen.
Are we here?
Why are we here?
That's been the question that quite a number of people have been asking me. Why are you having this hearing? What does this have to do with inflation? What does this have to do with the cost of living? What does this have to do with the everyday lives of Americans, the thing that the Republican Party said that they would focus on if they had control of the House? Why would the Republican leadership and the committee majority give a hearing and a platform to the witnesses today?
All right, so I just want to make 2 points here. One, that it's strange that the Democrat Party has decided to elevate this woman. But again, this is what the party is now. The party is not the party of the New Deal, right? It's not that. It's not the party that even Bill Clinton ran. It is now the party of minorities, whatever they say, whatever they want, we put them forward. We are all about, this for blacks and whatever else. That's why they were so upset about affirmative action, right? That's why Stacey Plaskett has this position. It's the party of being nasty to your opposition. That literally is what their voters want. They tune in to see her be nasty. They tune in for Debbie Wasserman Schultz to be nasty. That literally is the policy they want. It's not like, FDR, when I'm going to give electricity to the Appalachians. Oh, no. I'm not. Oh, you wanted electricity? We got it for you. That's something tangible. What we're going to give you is nastiness, and we're going to promote people based on their color. That's what she's there. And then this is a typical trick she uses. What's this going to do for inflation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Number one. And then number two, what was number two again? Number two was...
What does this have to do with the cost of living? What does this have to do with the everyday lives of Americans?
And the second thing is, what does this have to do with the everyday lives of Americans, right? So first, you're not putting food on the table. You're not really fighting inflation. Well, here's the other thing. Well, don't you think people would be concerned about corruption? I mean, if these people are corrupt, doesn't that concern you? I'd like to know if that's what's going on here, but apparently not. So here's Chantel Brown. She get on the action, and hers was pretty fascinating. I mean, what would you say if you can't go with the Hakeem or Plaskett line, right? And you can't attack saying this isn't really putting food on the table. If you can't do the Debbie Wasserman Schultz and just keep and smear the person and just outright censor them, what could you possibly do? Let's see what she could do.
No. Well, the answer is black taxpayers are audited at 2 point.
Sorry, need to be a little bit further back. Let's try to reset it. I don't know why we're having technical difficulties today, but she'll be here back in a minute. Chantel, go ahead, Chantel.
In this committee, they simply grasp at straw, have to post bail. Yet hundreds of thousands of Americans sit behind trying to fix after 4 years of Donald as compared to... asking a simple question,
All right,
Mr.
here's a
Shapley.
simple question. Sorry.
Yes or no? Do you know the rate at which Black taxpayers are audited as compared to taxpayers who are not Black?
No, I don't know.
All right, now, folks, what does that have to do with oversight, and what does that have to do with what we're here today to talk about, which was whether or not, this was yesterday, I'm sorry, day before yesterday, this is what, where Biden got the sweetheart deal, and they didn't really investigate his taxes, right? What's the difference? Now, again, I made that point earlier. I thought for a minute everything has to mirror, but apparently it doesn't have to mirror. Which is it, lady? So now, and again, this is a real C moment in this is a real C moment in where we are, because it used to be they would have to give one other piece of evidence. They have to say, look, here's a disparity, and here's one other piece of evidence that we believe demonstrates that the disparity proves racism. Now they just go, here's the disparity, racism. Well, but I don't know. I mean, maybe blacks are 2.5 times. By the way, I don't believe their numbers. And this is the problem with these people. You can't trust anything they say. Anything. They lie about everything. So I don't trust their numbers. I don't believe blacks are 2.5 times. But if they are, there could be a perfectly rational explanation for that. Right? I mean, among other things, they could be the ones that are actually cheating on their taxes. The reason I don't believe it, okay, is that A, they lie all the time. And they've cried wolf so many times I no longer believe them. And number two, I will tell you, the IRS agents that do this type of thing, they tend to get their bonuses and their reviews based on how much money they bring into the Treasury relative to their position. So I understand if you're going after the Donald Trumps of the world, it's relative, right? I mean, they're not going to say everybody has to bring the same number if you're going after people in this position where they tend not to have big numbers. But the point is, you have to succeed based on going after money. And based on economic principles and statistics, since black people do not make as much money, auditing them, you're not going to get as much money into the Treasury. So I would seriously doubt that that they're actually being audited. But if they are, there could be a very valid reason. But anyway, and again, this has nothing to do with Hunter Biden and all that. But somehow this has got to have something to do with race, because we can't talk about the Hunter Biden deal, but it gets better. Listen to this.
The answer is Black taxpayers are audited at 2.9 to 4.7 times the rate of non-Black taxpayers.
Okay, there you're right there. It shows me the numbers. Garbage, right? It's 2.9 to 4.7. Give me a break. That's not a calculation. That means you don't know. That means it was some crappy study that somehow put it up. Anyway, she continues.
Another question for you, sir. Yes or no? Will this hearing help alleviate the racial disparity in the rates of the IRS audits? No.
That's not the topic.
Thank you. And with that,
okay. Now, again, will this hearing again? This is kind of the same thing that they were doing a moment ago. Well, what will this do about the inflation? Well, I'm here about Hunter's, deal with the IRS, and they didn't investigate him. What will this have to do about putting food on the table? I thought we were here to talk about censorship on social media, right? We have other committees for that. And again, this is the type of thing that the media used to literally, there'd be some pushback against that. Not anymore. But here's what I really wanted to point out. I don't know if you caught that. She asked the question. The guy here looks, if you're watching on YouTube or Rumble later, he sits there and is like, and before he can do it, she answers. Now, again, this is an all-time low, even for Democrats. So now, apparently, we get to censor people because I don't like what you say. Now, and folks, by the way, I should have said this when I was talking about that earlier, but you know that's coming, right? You know that if they somehow win the House, and they might do it, right? If they somehow win the House in 2024, you know what's coming, right? If somehow a witness gets there and they decide, in other words, they won't call any witness, they're going to want to censor. So it's only going to be some Republican. They're going to go, oh, well, we're bringing in this guy, and they're going to vote to censor. And that's not what that's for, but that's what they're leading to. But this is an all-time low. You get to ask the question and answer the question. Take a listen. She does. He's sitting there trying to answer it, and she says no. Now, again, folks, this is something you can't do in a court of law. You can't do anywhere else. The chairman, and again, I'm not trying to pick on Jim Jordan. He's actually pretty good. But the chairman in this case should have gavelled this.
Question for you, sir. Yes or no? Will this hearing help alleviate the racial disparity in the rates of the IRS audits? No.
That's not the topic.
Thank you. And with that.
No. You heard her. She answered your own question. And one thing I meant to say about Stacey Plaskett, and I forgot, it's my fault. She used the term platforming. That was the other thing I wanted to say, and it slipped my mind. Platforming is something that you didn't hear 4 or 5 years ago. So you have no right to say that. We're gonna cancel you. We're gonna censor you. We're gonna do all this stuff. And now there's this idea of platforming. Well, what's platforming? Well, news company or Facebook or whatever, or CBS, you shouldn't use your platform to talk to that person, right? So let me understand how this works. This person's running for president. That's right. And I'm CNN and I'm covering the presidential election. That's correct. And if I go, hey, I'm going to go interview this person who's running for president, you're platforming them. Well, no. I'm covering the presidential election. I'm a news company. I'm going to go no, that's platforming. Well, how's it platforming? Where you're broadcasting their message further than others get, and that they wouldn't get if you didn't do it, right? I mean, again, this stuff is so obvious. It's not as though a child can't see it, right? If you're a news company, you're just reporting the news. But you saw it many times. I think it was when, I can't remember what it was. It was a rally or something, and Jake Tapper says, well, we're not going to go live to Trump because he spreads lies and we can't debunk him in real time, so we're just not going to cover it. That's called, we would be platforming him. Anyway, something to look for the future, and you're going to see how it's going to get worse. So Kamala earlier today, you heard her say to start the show that in Florida now, they are teaching that there were benefits from slavery. Now, I knew that was a hoax. I tweeted it last night. You can go back on my Twitter feed to prove that I'm right. And today I did the research just to see what they were talking about. Again, the first point, and I wish I had tweeted this last night. I caught it this morning when I woke up. It occurred to me. I thought they said they weren't teaching slavery. So they've gone from, you don't even teach slavery. And if you think I'm kidding, go to my Twitter feed. You will see me getting to debates. They're not really debates, but exchanges is probably a better term for it, with several people where they claim they don't even teach slavery. They just don't teach it. Okay, well, at least now you're acknowledging they teach slavery. You just don't like the way they're teaching slavery. Okay, so again, not only when I read this morning, and again, I went to one of the alphabets, NBC News, New Florida Standards, teach students that some black people benefit from slavery because it taught useful skills. Now, folks, I do want you to understand, I since have learned and done some research, you understand that this particular portion was put together by black people. Okay? Now, that's, again, I didn't quite think they're going that far. And I want you to back up a second again. And we talked about Glenn Close a couple of days ago, the left turn. One of the things you don't understand, you're being propagandized and hoaxed every day so bad that you can't even realize how bad you're being propagandized and hoaxed, right? And because your brain can't wrap yourself around the fact that they would be that over the top. But they are. This was actually done by black people. So anyway, the standards were blasted by statewide teachers union as a, quote, step backward, were approved Wednesday by the State Board of Education. So who cares what a teachers union thinks? Anyway, Florida public schools will now teach students that some black people benefited from slavery. Some black people benefited from slavery. That's not what it says, but whatever. Because it taught them useful skills, part of a new African American history standards approved Wednesday that were blasted by state teachers union as a step backward, quote unquote. Now again, the part of a new American history standards were put together by black leaders. So there you go. Anyway, if you do this, the Florida State Board of Education's new standards includes controversial language. Why is it controversial? Because the teacher union says it. I mean, this is an alphabet network, folks. I mean, I can sit here in real time and debunk this stuff. It's nonsense. About how slaves developed skills which in some instances could be applied to their personal benefit. That's the actual quote that we're going to go to. I'm going to make another point. And God, I just saw the clock. How does it take so long to do this? Anyway, slaves develop skills which in some instances could be applied to their personal benefit. That's obviously a true statement. Any moron knows that's a true statement. Okay? Now, and I could sit here not even having to do it, which we're going to do it. We're going to go to the 216-page document that was approved. But I can sit here and tell you, if you worked in a, if they taught you how to be a carpenter, right? Or the person that worked on horses whose names I can't remember, Jack Smith or Locksmith, whatever it was. If they taught you to cook, I remember Bubba Gump and Forrest Gump, and he talked about his mother and his mother and his mother and her mother and her mother and mother worked in those kitchens, and then later they formed the Bubba Gump Shrimp Company. I mean, there's just an undeniable fact that at some point it can become to your personal benefit. But notice up above, right, the way they write it. So the quote from the 216-page document that we're going to get to is, slaves develop skills which, comma, in some instances, comma, could be applied for their personal benefit. Obvious truth there, right? But that's not what they said. See, when the teachers union gets it or NBC gets it, it becomes some black people benefited from slavery. See, that's what they say above. Now, that's not what they said. Anyway, let's do what they click. It says right here, and I'm surprised they did it. A lot of times they won't do it, but I guess now with the internets, they're having to do it. So if you click on that document, it will take you to the portion. Here it is right here. SS 68-AA 2.3. SS 68 AA 2.2. Explain the effect of the cotton industry on the expansion of slavery due to Eli Whitney's cotton gin. That's the one before the one we're going to get to. Again, I thought slavery wasn't being taught in Florida. Well, that's okay. 2.1 is about slavery, or 2.2. 2.1, explain earlier congressional actions regarding the institution of slavery, i.e., Northwest Ordinance of 1787, 3/5 Compromise, Acts prohibiting the importation of slaves, 1808. Well, that's another one that's talking about slavery. What is 1.6? Examine the service and sacrifice of African patriots during the Revolutionary era. 1.5, analyze slave revolts that happened. Anyway, The whole idea they're not teaching slavery, this whole thing is about slavery. But whatever, here we get to 2.3. Examine the various duties and trades performed by slaves. Example, agricultural work, painting, carpentry, tailoring, domestic service, blacksmithing, that's what I was looking for, and transportation. Okay, benchmark clarifications. Instructions include how slaves develop skills which in some instances could be approved or applied for their personal benefit. Not the way I would have put it, folks, but again, I've already debunked it enough. But again, that doesn't keep the Vice President of the United States of America in this year of our Lord, going out and teaching this. And what in the world? I mean, it's just an embarrassment. And again, if you go and they are counting on you to not go look at the source. They are counting on you to not go to people who will explain this stuff to you. Because I understand y'all don't have the 15, 20 minutes nor the interest to do it. But I did. Anyway, they're counting on that. And by the way, if they're counting on their people not to listen, which they've gotten almost there, and then those of us who are still existing and going to tell people, they're going to sure censor us. Well, that's what RFK is about. So here's Sonny Aston. So there's this hoax out there. Jason Aldean has this song. I'm not going to play it. I thought about it. It's kind of a catchy tune. It's called something like Try That in a Small Town. It got to all the way on number 1 on iTunes or something. It's all about, basically, it's really catchy, but it's all about you can't get away in a small town because people know who you are and they'll stop it and they won't let you get away with things like they will in the city. So turns out, it got to number 1, and there's nothing racist about it, not one single solitary iota of a thing, but people decided that when they heard some racism, right, they can see dead people. So because they could see dead people, the Country Music Network or something took it off their list, right? And people have been talking about it for a while. So here's, I don't know what to call Sonny Hostin at this point. Just take a listen from The View.
And unfortunately, this became the number 1 song on U.S. iTunes. We have a problem in this country about race, and the biggest problem is we refuse to admit that it exists.
Well, don't you think
Okay, who refuses to admit that it exists? I admit that it exists. Yes, Sonny, you are a racist. I mean, I tweeted it earlier today, or if I hadn't, it's in the can to go out later. Why is it the racists get to tell us what's racist now? I mean, Sonny Hostin is a 100%, 1,000% unqualified, unabashed racist. And every day, what she just said there is racist. And she's upset and she's angry, and I'm sorry. But, Sonny, you have that job right there because of racism of people like you. I don't know what else to tell you. And there's nothing in that song that's racist. But anyway, she continues. I mean, somehow we refuse to, I think I saw an article a couple weeks ago that said that 33 to 40% of literally of the quote unquote news has to do with race. Who's not talking about it?
A lot of this big city, small town business is racist, is about race. The cities have more black people than the small towns.
Anyway, according to Greg Price, that's where I got that. He says that somewhere in this said that Macon, Georgia, is one of the most racist places in the country. Folks, I've practiced down there. I've been through there. It's Bibb County. It's a black county. It's run by black folks. There's nothing wrong with that, but I don't understand why they think that it's a racist county when it's being run by black folks. But anyway, so here's somebody random on Twitter who decided to talk about the Jason Aldean thing. And the only reason I put it in a can is, again, this is the world in which these people live. You have to understand, these are our friends, these are our neighbors, these are our relatives. I don't know how you get back to a rational system when this is out there. And this is a guy named Brant Robinson. You can find him at Brant Robinson. He's Carol's partner. That's a tell right there. Florida history teacher, rock climber, defender of public education. If you're not watching, you don't know this, but he's a white male with long hair, and let's listen to what he has to say about this.
Good evening. Thank you as always for your kindness and for your insights. Try that in a small town. That's the song that country music star Jason Aldean released a few months ago, and then last week shared the accompanying video. The response from Country Music Television removed the video from the air altogether, and I applaud their decision. It's offensive on so many levels. You know what Aldean's trying to do is draw a line between all the sinister things happening in cities and all the good people living in small towns. He plays upon racist tropes and stereotypes, even though he never uses the word race. Every time he shows an image of a small town, all the people are white. You know, he starts the song in the first 10 seconds by talking about a man being sucker punched on the street, an elderly woman being carjacked, and a liquor store being robbed. And his response, don't try that in a small town. We know how to take care of each other here. And you know, he alludes to gun ownership, except he does it in a sinister way by pointing to the trope.
You get the point. So basically, translation, hippie, that he doesn't say race, and there's nothing racist about it, but I perceived it to be racist, and therefore I applaud Country Music Television for taking it down. Folks, listen, if you don't have rational people, if you don't have reason, logic, if we don't have an objective way to do this, then, I guess, well, anyway, let's just move on. So here's Joyce Aldean. There's a couple of bits here. This has to do with January 6th and the charges that will soon be filed against former President Trump. And by the way, it's pinned up right now on my Twitter feed if you want to go to that. I think Elon Musk has changed it, and now you have to actually have a Twitter account. One of my little brothers doesn't get one, so I'm sure he'll verify soon, because he follows my Twitter feed, but he doesn't sign up, and so he won't be able to do that anymore. But if you still can, then it's the pinned tweet, and it's going to be for a while. But I spent about an hour debunking pretty much that January 6th thing. It's still up. You can also go to the YouTube or the Rumble channel, and the videos, you can find the video there. It's actually gotten a lot of views, which I'm grateful for. But it really does go through the basics of what's going on here, and it's a complete hoax. But the part of the reason they're doing that hoax is not only to interfere in the election and harass Trump and fundraise off of it, and to get some, I think the German term for it is Schadenfreude, where you get joy from the suffering of others, that type of thing. And this is what the category that falls into. But I like to bring up Joyce, and then the other fellow's name is, why is my computer so? Ron Filipowski. These are people who are social media influencers on the left these days, and they worked in the Obama Department of Injustice. And if I had been convicted by those people, I'd want people to go back and look at them, because these people are just hyper partisan. But anyway, she tweeted this today. Here's the thing. In a case like this, well, I'm sorry, I should back up. Today, Judge Counted announced that the trial for Trump in the Boxes hoax case will be May 20th, 24. I've been saying this on this podcast. I've been tweeting it. It will not go forward before the election unless both parties want it to, and at least one party doesn't. I'm pretty sure the Democrats don't either. But so actually Trump might want it to. I don't know. But either way, it won't, because there'll be motions filed, among other reasons. But this is the main reason. There'll be motions filed, motions to dismiss and this kind of thing, and you have an absolute right to appeal those, and they will be appealed, and they will take time. It's not going on the 20th. It's probably not going anywhere near before the election, and everybody knows that, okay? Anyway, so here's Joyce Aldean, and here's what she has to say about Judge Cannon announcing today. Here's the thing. In a case like this, plenty of opportunity for Trump to manufacture delay, and if this date slips, it is far less likely trial happens before election. Thank you, Joyce. for admitting the fact, except she has to make it sound like he's manufacturing a delay. He's not. I mean, you have a right to challenge the basis of the charges and take them up the chain. And setting in Fort Pierce with a tiny courtroom and no cameras allowed is a disservice to democracy. Now, I don't know what democracy is in her view. It's not a disservice to anything. But here's what Joyce knows. And if you're watching, you can see my tweet back. Joyce, and I'll just read it. Joyce knows that federal courts do not permit cameras or televising of criminal trials. Every law practicing in the federal courts know this. Period. It's not allowed. It never has been. They just don't do it. Now, I disagree with the policy, but we all know what it is. And there's a bunch of points there. The first point is, why do people like Joyce lie to her followers? I don't know. In fact, the Northern District, where I practice a lot in the district I'm broadcasting now, until recently, you couldn't even bring a device in that had a camera on it. Your iPhone, you had to check it out the door. Many of us, until recently, that when we had to go over to that court, we would just leave it in our office. There was no good because they weren't going to let you take it in. And I'm not talking about an iPhone. Any phone with a camera, period. You had a camcorder. You had a laptop that has a camera on it. No, sir. They changed it, and now those of us who are members of the court, officers of the court, right, you have to go through a process, and they'll give you a card, right, including a background check. And now I can take them in. But my clients can't. The client still can't. If my client comes in, I tell them, like, don't bring your iPhone, leave it in your car, because you're not going to be able to take it in. Anyway, so you get the point. All right, so here's Ron Filipowski. He tweeted this out. And again, one more point about Joyce Aldean I wanted to make. Sorry, a disservice to democracy. Folks, it's not a disservice to democracy. Not only does she know that it's the policy of the feds, she just wants to see a show. That's all. I mean, come on. Anyway, so back to Filipowski, kind of the same as Joyce. Take a listen to him. Trump on his imminent January 6th indictment, right? This is apparently somehow Trump was on a call, he was talking to somebody, and Trump had this to say, and I absolutely agree with Trump. Sorry, let me try it again. I don't know why this thing is like the fifth time. I keep telling it.
They want to indict me in this one. And why didn't they do it 2 years ago? Why didn't they do it like when it would have been, timely? But there is no timely. They did it because it's election interference. They did it right in the middle of my campaign. I'm campaigning.
So Trump has said that on Newsmax. He's absolutely, positively right. And so again, this is my point here is the left. There is no logic with them. Trump's point, and anybody who heard that knows what his point is that, hey, if they wanted to prosecute me for January 6th, they could have done it 2.5 years ago. One of the points I made in debunking the January 6th, and again, the video or the podcast, if you want to download there in both spots, is a little over an hour long, is that they knew about the January 6th stuff. They knew about it in November of 2020. This is not a surprise to anyone. And the point there is you've known about it. Why now? Well, why now is you want to interfere with the election. It's just that simple. So here's a guy named Brian Tyler Cohn. He doesn't show up in my feed much anymore. But he's one of these younger Democrat influencers, I don't know if he's pretending to be uninformed or just he is uninformed. But he makes an interesting point here about the youth being out there, and I thought it was worth enough that you should hear it and see it. Take a listen to him commenting about young people and politics.
Year-olds who live their entire lives on Instagram and TikTok. Only some of this trickles down. I'm fairly confident if I talk to a lot of Zoomers and young millennials I know, they don't even know who Jack Smith is. This is kind of your bailiwick. How much of this trickles down, right? How much of these sort of week in, week out details about these investigations are trickling down, and how's it being consumed by sort of younger viewers and Zoomers and things like that?
Yeah, I think the younger generations have a much higher proclivity to actually engage with this stuff than before. I mean, just with social media unto itself, we're able to consume so much more than we used to. I mean, how many kids, when even I was in school, were like picking up the newspaper to figure out what happened? But this stuff also impacts us. I mean, to claim that.
So before he goes on to impact, I want you to understand how bad this is. I mean, social media should have made us more informed. It's made us less informed. And he has a point there. It used to have to put some effort into being up to date on politics. But the good news was, if you spent the effort, if you really went to C-SPAN, if you really read the newspaper, the people there were actually journalists and they actually cared about their credibility. And they wouldn't do what Joyce Aldean did and said, oh, it's a disservice to democracy not to televise it. It would have said, it is the policy of the federal courts not to televise trials, civil or criminal. That is the policy. Now, so-and-so from such and such argues that in this particular instance, an exception should be made. That's fine if you say that, right? Then the person's informed. Oh, the reason but see, she left us with the point, if you read Joyce Eileen, that's that Judge Cannon, that Trump appointee. She's not letting us see that. It's a disservice to democracy, and it's a small courtroom in Fort Pierce. And, right? I mean, that's what he's living. And here's Tyler Cohen's point is, oh, no, we're now more informed. No, you're not. You're less informed. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Anyway, here's the other point that the youth is being abused. And I do mean that term advisedly. They are being abused. Take a listen.
Doesn't have a massive impact in our lives, with everything happening with abortion, with these don't say gay laws, with these LGBT bans, with interstate travel bans that are happening across that are happening in certain states. I mean, to claim
there's no interstate travel ban. There's no don't say gay. So, one, he thinks he's more informed when he's less informed. He's being lied to. Number two, he thinks it has more to do with his life. Do you know why there's a slight, and they're exaggerating, there's only a slight uptick in the participation of young people, but they are voting a little bit more Democrat than they did in prior years. But they're less informed, but they're more scared. That's why. So think about that. Think about how dangerous that is. You've misinformed people, and you've scared the bejeebus out of them so that now they got to go vote and make sure they vote in an uninformed fashion. I mean, this is scary stuff. And this is the new world we live in, folks. Don't sleep on it. All right. So this came up in my reading this morning. Why Democrats are already outspending Republicans in 2024 races. Democrat candidates invested heavily in digital consulting, advertising, and email list building. Blah, 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 blah. Senate Democrats who've raised massive sums for their re-election campaigns have invested heavily in digital space, whether it be ads, consulting fees, or acquiring new donors, according to an analysis of second quarter campaign finance data by The Messenger. Blah, 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 blah. Nonsense, nonsense, nonsense. This is trying to convince you that Democrats are outspending Republicans because they're doing it with digital stuff and they're doing it with the new age stuff, and that's the reason why they're spending gobs of money more than the Republicans. And that's all designed to hide the fact from you that right before our very eyes, right, they have done a lot of things. But one of them, besides attack the Constitution on a daily basis, I mean, I didn't talk about it, I may have talked about it yesterday. The Democrats have gotten out of committee a law that proposes to regulate the Supreme Court, something that anybody knows is unconstitutional. It's not close. It's idiotic. There's a reason we've never done it. But, they've got so many people now thinking that the Constitution doesn't exist or doesn't understand it, they can get away with it. The new reality is, and I remember this wasn't the reality, used to be Republicans pretty reliably outspent Democrats because they were the quote-unquote party of the rich, which there was some merit to that. I mean, the FDR coalition was the middle class, and it was the working class. Now, I'm not going to say they didn't have some wealthy people. They did. They've always had the wealthy leftists and socialists and communists and people like that. But by and large, Republicans in general were more wealthy, and they had more money to give, and they had more money to donate. That has long not since been the case. The Democrat coalition now is the party of the uber rich. It is the party of Wall Street. That's obvious to anyone. I mean, I'm not even just talking about Google and Meta and some of these. I'm talking about Bank of America, all right, J.P. Morgan, companies that, General Motors. I mean, companies that you would never imagine. Anyway, and they routinely now outraise and outspend Republicans. And it's not a coincidence that you hear these idiots keep talking about dark money. Democrats rule every bit of fundraising, and it's not even close anymore. I mean, it's like the joke they keep talking about the NRA. I remember when the NRA was a powerful lobby. A long time ago, they used to be a powerful lobby. Don't even just stop the podcast right now. Go to Google and rank of lobbying groups. And when you get to 50, you'll see the NRA. All the Democrat lobbying groups, they're all up in the top. But you got these millennials like Brian Tyler Cohen, who believes in don't say gay and believes apparently now you can't travel between states. He probably thinks it's the most powerful lobby ever known to man. Anyway, I want a couple more stories, and hopefully I have a white pill at the end. Okay, I do have a white pill at the end. Good. All right, so this I just caught in my feed. Brawl in Florida movie theater. 60-year-old man attacked after telling couple they had taken his reserve seat. And I'm a little surprised that the guy that did this, I think make sure I've got him right. Yeah, this guy is a senior executive at NBC Universal. He's a known leftist. But the guy who apparently started the brawl is a black man, and he's asking if you know, call the Broward County Sheriff's Office. That's Fort Lauderdale, Florida down there. So apparently a couple said, hey, you're in my reserve seat, and next thing you know, it's a brawl. And the reason I brought that up is, remember, I think it was yesterday, we talked about the cashless bail. That's not somebody that ought to be able to get out on the street easily. But under the new cashless bail, and it is not in Florida yet, so don't get ahead of me. But if this happened in Chicago, this person would be right back out on the street. And not such a good thing. Anyway, all right, so let's finish the show today. This is journalist Emma Jo Morris. She was, I think, the second witness in the hearing for censorship in government. So I think RFK Jr. was first. She came second. She is the reporter from the New York Post that broke the Hunter Biden laptop story. And I'm going to let you listen to a little bit of her talking about what happened when she broke that story. And I think you'll get the white pill when she gets to it. But if not, I'll fill it in and we'll close out the show. Take a listen. Let me make sure the speaker's where it's supposed to be. All right, good deal.
Reporting was censored on all major platforms on the basis of being called hacked or Russian disinformation. Twitter refused to allow users to share the link to the stories, banned the links from being shared in private messages, a policy, by the way, that's used to clamp down on child porn, and locked the post out of its verified account. Facebook said it would curb distribution and reach of the links on its platform. However, the stories were not based on hacked materials, nor were they Russian disinformation. And despite those claims appearing to come out of thin air at the time, we would eventually learn that they actually didn't come out of thin air at all.
So before she tells us that we thought they came out of thin air, they didn't come out of thin air at all. But I want you to understand what you're witnessing in our country right now. And after you finish the podcast, we're going to be done in about 60 seconds here. Go out and watch the news. The Democrats and the left, it's like this committee's not even happening. Oh, how's this had inflation? Why are you platforming this woman here? Why are you platforming her? And she can tell everybody and lie about this stuff. I mean, this is Watergate level corruption. This makes Watergate, right, look like it's not even corruption. And it's not going to be anywhere. You wouldn't even have heard about this woman if you hadn't listened to this podcast at all. Anyway, here she is. You remember where she was. She said, all this came out of thin air. At least we thought it was. And turns out it wasn't.
On October 19th, 5 days after the Post began publishing, Politico ran a story headline, Hunter Biden's story is Russian disinfo, dozens of former intel officials say. God, I can't even say that with a straight face, you know?
All right, folks. I don't know if she scripted that. It's fitty-fitty. I'm pretty good at reading people. Strange, I have one of my talents I have. It's 50-50. But she's right. I mean, folks, at the time, all of us knew it. I mean, one of I think what wasn't scripted, if you'll remember, was that came up in the debate. And Biden said, I have a letter from 51 people that say that what you're talking about is Russian. And I was like, come on, you know what the Russia is it? I mean, you look back now, you have to laugh. But folks, the fact that they continue to push this is not good. But the fact that we've gotten to the point where, I mean, you look back, it really is laughable. So hopefully, there is something that will come out of this, and we've got the tools to do it. And a lot of the times, I'm very good at analyzing and showing you all the bad things that are out there. And I'm not as good at telling you. But look, folks, we can fix this. We can fix this real quick if people focus and if people want to fix it. I mean, that's the beauty of the United States. I mean, we were sitting around, hanging out, and Europe was in peril, in 1941 and 40 and everything. And, they literally, I mean, that war could have gone the wrong way. And America finally decided, well, I guess we need to get interested in that. And when we did, we changed the world in a matter of years. We can do it again. And this first step to it is realizing what's happening, laughing about it because it is kind of funny in a way, and then doing something about it. So hopefully these hearings, things will start to pick up, and people will start doing the right thing. So anyway, you're all caught up to date now with the news of the day, everything you need to know. Hope you have a great weekend, and if you enjoyed the live stream / podcast, I hope you tune back in tomorrow.